Okay, so good afternoon. I'm back. It's 3:08, and in Connie's world, that's 3 o'clock. So I promised I would be back over here. I imagine a couple people jump on. I just put a note up that I was coming back on at 3, and I was working on a document here for somebody, and so I, when I work on those, I get pretty hyper-focused. Like I just zero in, and it's not like writing a novel, it's like writing a encyclopedia or a fact book or something. So I got really super focused on that. But in the meantime, I did a little bit more. I said this morning when I did the live that I was going to pull up some print off some of these additional documents when I reviewed this executive order. And I don't have the executive order on it because somebody just sent me the link to the whitehouse.gov at presidential actions, and then it has a date. It doesn't always give those executive order numbers on them. You have to actually print the PDF, but this is their press release one. And you can see I didn't have a very good printer to print this on, so it's kind of faded, but I have read through the whole thing, and it refers to government operations. So I'm going to get back to that in just a minute. Training, I'm just going to tell you a little bit more. I have 2 more trainings I want to do in the first set of 15. So if you have not seen the trainings, you don't have to participate in them live because I like to have a few people on there live with me. Just kind of keeps me energetic, especially when I'm doing some of this really rote, heavy duty, just information that is kind of like not the most interesting thing in the world. But it's all this technical stuff. So it perks me up a little bit just to have somebody that I can see that they're watching, right? So I appreciate people jumping on the Zoom. But I am recording the training. I'm downloading it, the video and the audio. And then I upload the video on a YouTube channel called Family Forward. And I upload the SoundCloud upload to Spotify for podcasters, Spotify podcast. And I share those links typically in Family Forward on Facebook. And then I usually pin them to the top. You can go through if you're getting on Family Forward on your phone, you do have to actually click at the top where it says featured. I didn't bring my other phone in here, but where it says featured, and the ones that I pinned to the top will show up under featured. Or you can just go to the YouTube channel, Family Forward. I have the trainings. I have a few other miscellaneous videos on there, but I'm trying not to junk it up too much. So you can catch up, and the trainings are numbered, so you can see them by number. I am putting them in Google Classroom so that I can add some other information as well. And I know the Google Classroom is a little bit confusing because you have to have a classroom number. I am putting all the trainings into a WordPress blog page with the links to the classroom, the videos, the audios, etc. And I'm putting in the Google Classroom additional documents, sometimes additional video to watch, or something to make you better versed on that subject. Like for instance, the training I'm working on right now is words, terms, and acronyms in the CPS process. And I thought it would be a little boring, but actually a fairly easy training to do. And I wanted to, I just got online and I started pulling up the glossaries that I could get in PDF form from the different CPS agencies. And of course I got DCS, which I got a glossary of terms. And then I got there, which is, how many pages is that one? That is, I don't know, about 12 pages maybe. And then I got their acronyms, which again, this is backwards. You don't need to read it right now, but just all these acronyms, but you have to know what they are or have a reference for them. And then I found other glossaries like Indiana, DCS, Washington, Pennsylvania, Oregon, etc. So I have uploaded in the classroom for that training several different glossaries. I just can't I'm not going to be able to merge them all. Maybe somebody else can try to do that. And stick those into AI or something, but I am going to have those up there so you'll have access to them. So our training, though, I try to keep the trainings down to about 40 to 45 minutes. And then I am creating quizzes, but this understanding the language of CPS is so important. I know I say that about every training I do, that it's so important, and it is. But knowing the language and the lingo, because so many times, and I'll tell you, even when I started doing child welfare cases, you get in the courtroom and they start spewing out letters like, ICWA and RAD and SAT and SSI and EAP and IEP and CBC and you're just like, you feel like really stupid. And so of course the parents feel really stupid as well. So, and I know in one of my last videos when I was training, what was the last training? But I talked a lot about asking questions, right? When you get to a point of something, it's about the step-by-step process. And I keep saying, ask questions, ask questions, ask questions. Take notes and ask questions. There can be nothing better to help you along the way. Do not trust your government, period, period, period. Do not trust them, okay? So I couldn't get it done adequately. I like to make either a PDF or a slideshow or, some organized presentation in, Word format. I couldn't get it all done. So, because I had other things I had to get done. So I am going to continue working on that one. Hopefully by next Friday, we can do the words, terms, and acronyms. And then the next one, I am collectively putting together a training just about difficult communications. And, as a divorce attorney for 30 years, you have a lot of difficult communications that you have to engage in. And then I also had to train new attorneys coming in on difficult communications because they just aren't really prepared for that. It doesn't teach you that in law school, which is another reason why we need advocates and case managers even in the litigation process, because it's a skill in and of itself to communicate. And even people I try to talk to about their case, people's communication skills pretty much suck, I'm just going to tell you. So whatever you can do to improve your own communication skills and learn how to stop and listen and ask appropriate questions, and when somebody is angry or upset, how to get the information out of them that you need, etc. So, and always assume, and I even get caught in myself in situations where like I get an unexpected answer from somebody, and when you get that unexpected answer, you're kind of set back. You're like, you don't know what to do, and you sort of take it back, even as skilled as you are as a in communication. But, you've got to, if you're a good communicator, you are, hang on a minute, I gotta make myself a note. You are always understand that at some point there's going to be an unanticipated response or answer that you didn't really expect, right? So that's going to be part of the communication training. And it's going to take a lot of communication training. Also, we touched briefly on sort of the logic and the process in interrogation and witness testimony, just sort of the slippery slopes of argumentative behavior, etc. These are all so important even for parents to learn. All right, so that's the trainings. I'm going to get those two in, I promise, before March is over. Whew. And then I have another set of training on the competencies of advocacy. And then I have pulled the CASA training and the guardian ad litem training, and we'll start to pull through some of those so that people feel confident and trained. And then we can get to a point where you can actually call yourself a qualified, educated advocate, right? All right. I know so many people want to try to help, and just because you've been through your own case doesn't mean you're going to be able to help, right? Because even though, whether good or bad or ugly, right? No matter what the results are, you have lived experience. That's very important, very critical to the process. But just because you have that doesn't mean that you're in a mental or intellectual place to advocate as a peer support or just as an advocate, right, in the process, whether it's disability, education, or just a general CPS advocate. So we're going to do that because we have an army of people. We have an army of people who want to be helpful. We have an army of people who've been through this, we have an army of people still fighting who just want the education for themselves to be able to feel more comfortable moving through it. And one of the reasons I created the Family Forward Project in that group is so people can put in there, oh, this happened, right? This experience happened to me in court. This happened to me in court. And I know a lot of people ask people, what should I do? And, the answers are all over the place because I can't keep up with everyone every day. But, and I don't always agree with every answer that people give them. So I try to temper it a little bit. But a lot of people that are responding are trying to sincerely respond based upon their own experience and what they've seen or what they've heard me talk about, right? Or sometimes they just say, go watch such and such training, etc. But the other purpose of that in Family Forward Project is so I can watch from all over the country. I can watch patterns, right? I did a whole jot form survey one time with some patterns I was looking for. I got about 178 responses. I want to thank you all very much for that. And I printed them all off. I have them all in notebooks. And honestly, I'm telling you the truth. I sit and read them. Okay. So, but I asked for things like, were you happy with your guardian ad litem? Did the judge listen to you? Did you get those services you needed, etc.? So I've done that. I did one before back in 2017 and 18 just to get some general information about those stories. I think I still probably got about 80 to 100 responses in that as well. But the one I did about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, was trying to find the patterns. And I've done it through Monkey Survey to, try to show patterns, etc. So there's a very important part of this. And today we're going to talk a little bit more. We're going to sort of start at the top at the national level. And then I'm going to sort of drill down a little bit and basically get down to some details in the state of Tennessee. But I want you to understand that this is to help change the system. This is also someplace that you need to go and what you need to do on your particular state, okay? So you need to, for instance, if you're in Wyoming, you need to learn to find the budget, go to the budget, what kind of details to look for, how you can find it, become computer gurus, right? In searching through data and how important data is. We're going to talk about that some more. All right, so glossary, terms, words, acronyms, all going to be part of the next training. And it's going to be like semi-boring, I would say, probably semi-boring. Some trainings you can just listen to. I always, I try to do something visual, but, some you can listen to. But going back and looking at the words, printing off these glossaries, you need to start making yourself a notebook, an advocate notebook if you can, if you have the ability to do that. If you do have access to a printer, get a notebook, a little 3-hole punch, and putting in your notes. I do put the slides up in PDF. I do them sort of in a reduced size, like 4 to a page or something, because you really just sort of need to refresh your memory on them. And so you can, download those slides, put those in your book. I don't have all my quizzes. I'm not up to date on all my quizzes, but I do have quizzes on about the first 4. I also am pretty much always trying to put some additional reference material in there for you. So, and eventually we're going to get to forms as well and, have our own set of forms and stuff to work with. All right. Okay. So let's talk about ensuring accountability. So we are at a very, very critical stage. And if you listened on Monday, I talked my head off for over 2 hours. I was going to try to go for 4 hours, and somebody called me and something happened. It glitched my phone and cut off my sound on my live. So it was a I was getting a little weary. Didn't quite do everything I wanted to do, but you heard me talk a lot about just the status of the funding and the money and the Doge. Okay, so Doge is our buzzword of the day. Obviously, it's the buzzword of everybody. A lot of people are talking about it, and there's a lot of critiques. There's a lot of criticism as to what Elon Musk is doing, Marjorie Taylor Greene are doing, in positioning themselves to do audits on government efficiency. Okay, now already billions of dollars, and some days you hear it's 200 billion, some days you hear it's going to be $1 trillion, some days, the bottom line is it is more money than we can count. Okay, that's just the way to look at it. It is more money than we can count. And so whatever our area of interest is, I mean, there's waste everywhere. When they start getting into the Pentagon and the defense budget, they showed some the other day where they were paying like $4,000 for a soap dispenser, which I totally believe, by the way. But, that kind of waste is going to show up everywhere. It's going to show up everywhere. So, some of those are going to be easier to find. I noticed in one of the reports that Elon Musk team had found that 70% of the entries for disbursements with the Department of Treasury are not marked with there's a certain code, a SAT code or something. There's a particular blank that they're supposed to put in to fill in. Now, if you've ever, I'm not an accountant, okay? And accounting is not my thing, right? But I have owned a business. I've been involved with a few businesses all the way back in the old days when all of our accounting with my mom was done on those green line sheets. I forget what they call them, Wilson sheets or whatever. But I should keep one just so I could show you. But there was this green paper and had green lines on it, and you put, you did a daily entry, and then you had categories, right, of where that expense fell into what category. So we did this way back in the day, and we had one of those old accounting calculators that had the crank, right? I never did figure out how those things works, but you punched in those physical buttons, and somehow it created certain cogs, and then you grind down this great big handle, and you have a paper tape in it, right? Like those are the days. Those are the days when I started learning, actually from my mom, about how you operate a business from a spreadsheet, right? So, doing things analog teaches you a lot of things that some people will never learn in our digital world. So we had these green sheets, we had categories for everything. So it might be food, might be delivery, laundry, utilities, right? Staffing. Okay, so you had categories. And so then when I had my own business, my own law practice, and, we start developing a step further, and we use QuickBooks. I started with QuickBooks way back in the day. First, I used Peachtree Accounting. Then we went to QuickBooks. QuickBooks was more simpler to use, more simpler to set up. But the important thing is, the critical thing is setting it up. And when you get it set up, you have accounts. So you have accounts for taxes, right? And then under taxes, you have subcategories. You have property taxes, you have liability taxes, you have payroll taxes, you have unemployment taxes, you have Medicare taxes, right? So, but everything is categorized so that when you print off a report, you can print off taxes and you can see all this money you're paying in taxes and all the subcategories in taxes. You can look at it for in the law practice, you had to pay dues, right? You had to have the American Bar Association dues, the Tennessee Bar Association dues, the Nashville Bar Association dues, whatever other dues, whatever association or organization. So you had dues and you had subscriptions, you had legal research subscriptions, right? So I guess you all are getting my point. that you have to categorize your expenses, because at the end of the year, you have to print off a report and do your taxes. I guess since the government doesn't have to do taxes, they don't have to worry about it, right? But when you do your taxes, you have to have all your expenses categorized so that you can put them down on your tax form. All right. So, but what's happening is the U.S. government is not categorizing those expenses in a way that they can generate a report and see what that money is going to. This is outrageous, honestly. And like I said, since the government doesn't have to do a tax return, they should have to do their own tax return and report back to us on it. But since they don't have to do a tax return, they don't have to itemize all their own expenses. And so this is what's happening. And Musk team found that 70% of the government disbursements were not coded. That's outrageous, okay? Outrageous. So that's where we are. I mean, that's just where we are. And so they're making a, okay, are we back on? Can somebody give me a thumbs up if you can hear me? All right, so, Doug, yeah, Charlene, can you hear me? Yeah, can everybody hear me okay? Because my phone rang, it almost went off, and then it came back on. So, judges just cleared for USA Day to be abolished. Elon said he's not using, TAS code for tracking. He's not said not using, right, TAS code, that's it. So, all right, so everybody's like, who is he? What's he doing? He's not a government. He's not elected. He's not the president. How can he do all these things? So basically that gets back to what is this ensuring accountability? This ensuring accountability executive order. This executive order is basically telling all the federal agency that they need to be complying with laws that are already on the books. And that's what I was saying this morning. So it refers to a couple things in here, and I'm going to show you what they are because I am a source person. I like to go back to the source document and see what's going on. So it refers in part to 44 USC 3502. And as to section 1 for definition. So section 1 is what is an agency, all right? The term agency, this also gets back to what I was talking about with our training, right? Words, terms, and acronyms. Agency means any executive department, military department, government corporation, government control corporation, or other establishment in the executive branch of government, including the office of the president or any independent regulatory agency, but does not include the GAO, which is the Government Accountability Office, the Federal Election Commission, the governments of the District of Columbia or other territories, and government-owned contractor-operated facilities, including laboratories engaged in national defense research and production activities. Yeah, okay, so that makes us a little nervous, right? So let's back up a minute. It says that it does include government corporations. Now, when I said that word, you all should have gone, government corporation? What is a government corporation? Okay, so there are corporations let me describe it another way. The United States Bureau of Prisons is a United States corporation, okay? Kind of complicated. I studied this a while back. I don't have it all on the top of my head, but I was looking into the money and the funding in the private prisons, and I found out through my research and discovery that the United States Bureau of Prisons is a corporation owned by the United States government, which is you and me, right? But it's a corporation. The other one is government-controlled corporation. Now, what is a government-controlled corporation? I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. We're going to have to dig into that one a little bit. Then independent regulatory agencies are like the EPA, right? That's an independent regulator. There's a whole bunch of them, by the way. There's 3 dozen probably. Now, it says, but does not include the GAO or the Federal Election Commission. However, over here in this executive order, it says that because it refers to all agencies, and it says an agency is as described in this statute, but also includes the Federal Election Commission. Okay, so don't think, so the Federal Election Commission is going to be deep into this as well, right? So it's going to include all those agencies, all the agencies. I think there are about 40 agencies. I know at the state level we have 40 agencies: Department of Education, Department of Energy, Department of Defense, Department of Human Services, Department of Urban and Housing Development, Department of the Interior, right? Department of Commerce, right? So you can go through, there's about 40 of those. So all of those are agencies of the executive branch. Now, there is one little hiccup in here. This is interesting. It says that this order does not apply to the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve as to monetary policy, but it does apply to the governors of the Federal Reserve in its regulation and supervision of financial institutions. I think that's a very interesting inclusion in here. I know there's a reason for it that we don't understand yet. Oh, the TVA is a government-controlled corporation. Okay, yeah, I'll go with that. I agree with that. Thank you. And then it refers to, when you go through it, and you get here near the end of it, almost halfway, better, more than halfway through it, it talks about performance standards and management objectives, et cetera, et cetera. It says here, the director of the OMB, which is the Office of Management and Budget, shall, on an ongoing basis, review the independent regulatory agency's obligations for consistency with the president's policies and priorities. Okay, so that's a key thing. And I'm going to give you an example in our world how this applies. So ACF, the Administration of Children and Families, passed a new regulation, which the regulations are under the Code of Federal Regulations, CFR. And under the Biden administration, they put in a regulation that said that every licensed foster care service, which could be state-owned or privately owned or religious, part of a religious organization, if you're going to provide foster care services, you have to be licensed. And it said any licensed foster care service had to provide facilities for children who are basically gender dysphoric and want to transition or live in a different body or whatever they want to do, right? So this created a lot of stir when it came out. Immediately, a few people sent it to me. And at first I thought it only applied if you were taking Title IV-E money, but if the agency was, but I don't think it's the agency itself. I think if the state agency, the State Department, the Child Welfare Department within the particular state, not the State Department as in Marco Rubio, but the department within the state is taking Title IV-E money, and they provide licensing for foster homes. There is a requirement in a regulation about accepting LGBTQ children, gender dysphoric, gender transition, whatever. So that is an agency obligation that is not consistent with the president's policies and priorities. I think it's pretty safe to say that. So there are so many of these out there now. It's the whole, DEI at every doorstep, right? And they became, in the last 4 years, they became so infiltrated in so many different ways that we don't even know where they all are because they're just snuck in here and there. Now, I have that regulation somewhere, and I've printed it. I have notebooks. I print stuff, and then I put it in a notebook, and I end up with just all these, 3.5-inch notebooks all over the place. And I try to tab them, and it's like having a whole little library of Connie's Congress, I guess you would have to call it. All right, so it says, back to what this order, now it says that on an ongoing basis, they'll review the obligations for consistency with the president's policies. And the second part is consult with independent regulatory agency chairman and adjust the agency's apportionments by activity, function, project, or object as necessary and appropriate to advance the president's policies and priorities. Okay, so and then it says such adjustments or apportionments may prohibit interdependent regulatory agencies from expending appropriations on particular activities, functions, projects, or objects, so long as such restrictions are consistent with law. So this is putting the hammer down. Now it's up to these agencies really to start sorting through what they have on their books in the regulations that are inconsistent with the president's agenda. That's a big deal. And you're going to still have to have good bureaucrats who are going to go do that, right? You have to have good people within the bureaucracy who are going to start pulling those things out, pulling them out, striking them, getting rid of them because they're not consistent with the overall agenda. So I find this very critical, and I find this section very proactive. Okay, this is a very proactive requirement on the bureaucrats, right? So, and then down here, the additional consultation with the Executive Office of the President. Independent regulatory agency chairman shall regularly consult and coordinate policies and priorities with the directors of the OMB, the White House Domestic Policy Council, and the White House National Economic Council. Okay, so the agencies have to report to the OMB, which is the Office of Management and Budget, who's the person who's responsible for making sure the checks get written to everybody associated with the federal government or people who want money from the federal government. So the OMB has to report to the agencies have to report to the OMB, and then the OMB has to report to the White House Domestic Policy Council, etc. Whew, hope you followed all that. That sounds a little confusing. But that is, as I read this, and as I said earlier, or put on my post early this morning, this executive order reads like something a chief executive officer, a CEO of a corporation would write to direct the transition of leadership when a company is bought or sold, right? I mean, you're going to now follow our agenda, right? This is our plan. We've now bought the company, and here's what our priorities are. Here's what our objectives are. And my priorities and my objectives are going to trickle down. And then you're going to report up, right? The priorities and objectives trickle down. The reporting trickles up, right? So that's what this is establishing. Very common sense management of a corporation. Oh, thank you, Jen. All right, so we talked about this one, 44 U.S. Code 3502. Okay, that's the one that describes an agency. Now I want to tell you what else is in this one while we have this one up. This code is important for a couple other reasons. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but basically this section of the U.S. Code is about information, about federal information, and it's about information technology, information systems, information resources management, and public information, record keeping requirements, data inventories, data assets, machine readable metadata, open license, data asset, public data assets, and statistical laws. Okay, so this chapter, and this is just one little section of this chapter, this whole chapter of 44 of the U.S. Code, chapter 35, as it says up here at the top, is really, that entirety of that code is really about collecting data and then how to make that data in a readable, organized form, and then making it available to the public. Oh, what a great idea, right? Like, one of the things I complain about all the time is we can't get access to the data. And the fact that we have to make quote unquote public records request this day and age, when everything should be uploadable and searchable. I mean, every single thing, even like, and they have manipulated so much. I mean, I'll give you a couple examples. So I track the Board of Professional Conduct. I track their conduct a lot. And one of the things that I pulled is about 4 or 5 years ago now, I pulled their minutes from their meetings. And the thing I found from the minutes from their meetings is, like, internally, they were recommending people that they wanted to work with to come onto the board with them. So my complaint was like, this is not a like a fraternal oversight board where the members of the bar, who are basically one fraternity, it's not like making that generally available for the entire population of the board to create a broader base of opinions, right? They are selectively taking people and putting them in those places. And of course, there's all these other nuances associated with that. So for instance, there's the nuance that, you want to serve on the board as a reviewing officer because it's going to insulate you from being reviewed by the board. I mean, that's just the way it goes, right? The people who take those positions, now they don't get paid for them. It is a volunteer thing, but it's not that many additional hours. And then they are sort of in that sort of unique little cliche club, right? Where they are no longer reviewed and scrutinized because they've been part of that reviewing body, right? So I made a complaint about that because it was in the minutes. It was right in the minutes. I attached the minutes. Well, the next thing you know, all the minutes have everything taken out of it. The only thing it says in the minutes after I made that observations and pulled the copies, all it said was like, these are the people who were present, the roll was called, these 5 issues were before the board, and then they went into executive session, right? So they totally changed the way they do their minutes to be able to obfuscate the actual activities that were occurring. So you can't just get the minutes and find out what's going on. I mean, honestly, they should all be recorded. They should just all be audio recorded, right? That's not a big problem anymore. And you can just upload the audio. It doesn't take that much data space to upload an audio file anymore. So then if somebody wants to transcribe it word for word, they have that available. So of course, I'm the same way about courts. Way back when I started even being a voice to try to correct the problems with the system, the first thing I said is every single courtroom needs to have a video or audio recording, and those need to be made available to litigants at an administrative fee, and not so they do not have to get a court reporter. And then if they want a particular section of the transcript, they can just ask for that section, because you don't have to get the whole transcript. You don't have to pay thousands of dollars anymore. This is 2025, right? This is the world of electronic transcription. I mean, you watch a YouTube video and they electronically transcribe it while you're watching it, right? Like in real time. Why are we paying $6 a page for 40 words on a page, and a whole transcript for a day being 300 pages, and it takes a month to get it? Why are we doing that? I mean, this whole system of court reporting is like a buggy whip. I mean, it's no longer needs to be done. Now, if you want to have one there, that's fine, but you should be able to rely upon the electronics that we have available to us for very low cost, and to be able to get those transcripts through artificial intelligence and artificial transcriptions, which, I use one particular website. They charge like $1.25 a minute, and somebody even reads it, right? And you can plug in the names of people, and you can describe the people. You can say the first man to speak is John. The second man to speak is Stu, or whatever. And then it will go through the whole transcript, and it will recognize the change in voices, and it will add those tags to it, as well as the timestamp and, everything else. So rarely, and once in a while, there'll be an inaudible. I had one transcript from a hearing that they did against me, and I think in 70 pages there were 140 inaudibles. Now, how can you rule on the record when you have that many inaudibles on a transcript? You can't. And plus they've changed things. I've caught them changing things as well. So, all right. So this, what this is, to conclude on this one, which is the 44 U.S. Code 3502, that defines what an agency is, but it also, this particular code talks a lot about data, getting data. Okay, but that's not all right? Put that out of the way. All right, so back to the executive order. At near the very end of it then, it says the independent regulatory agency chairman shall submit agency strategic plans developed pursuant to the Government Performance and Results Act of 1993. All right, so do y'all know who was president in 1993? I'll give you 30 seconds. Ding dong, ding dong, ding dong, ding dong. Bill Clinton, okay? So the Modernization Act of 1993 is the Clinton administration. I know, because 1994, for his re-election, I was actually invited to an event by a big Democrat, and he was there, so I wanted to meet him, so I went. I know a lot of people give me a lot of grief about it because they try to make out like I was some big secret friend of Bill Clinton's, which I was not, but yes, Bill Clinton. So the 1993 Government Performance and Results Act. So that is right here. Okay, I'm gonna flip my camera around so you can see this. Hang on. All right, so here, so I went directly to the source, and this is the Government Performance and Results Act of 1993. Now look at what this says. It says, can you see that? I think you can. It looks like you can. Waste and efficiency in the federal programs undermine the confidence of the American people in the government and reduces the federal government's ability to address adequately vital public needs. Federal managers are seriously disadvantaged in their efforts to improve program efficiency and effectiveness because of insufficient articulation of program goals and independent information on program performance, and congressional policymaking, spending decisions, and program oversight are seriously handicapped by insufficient attention to program performances and results. Okay, so the purpose of this was to improve program effectiveness and public accountability by promoting a new focus on results, service quality, and customer satisfaction. Imagine that. Imagine that. That is one of the purposes of this act. And then it says to improve service delivery by requiring that they plan for meeting program objectives and providing them with information about program results and service quality, and improve congressional decision-making by providing more objective information and achieving statutory objectives on the relative effectiveness and efficiency of the federal programs and spending, and improve internal management of the federal government. Imagine that, y'all. You see that right there? You see that? August 1993. Okay, so this is, and over here, it talks about what all of these agency, the head of each agency, do you see that? Not later than September 30th, 1997, the head of each agency shall submit to the Director of the Office of Management and Budget, that's the OMB, and to Congress a strategic plan for program activities, and such plan shall contain a comprehensive mission statement covering the major functions and operation of the agency. So every single agency should have a mission statement. The general goals and objectives, including outcome-related goals and objectives for the major functions and operations of the agency, a description of how the goals and objectives are to be achieved, including a description of operational processes, skills, technology, and the human capital, information, and other resources required to meet those goals and objectives. A description of how performance goals included in the plan required in Section 1115A of Title 31 shall be related to general goals and objectives in the strategic plan. Identification of those key factors external to the agency beyond its control that could significantly affect achievement and general goals and objectives, and a description of the program evaluations used in establishing or revising general goals and objectives with a schedule for future program evaluations, and it shall cover a period of not less than 5 years. So by September 30th, 1997, there should be out there somewhere in the public domain a strategic plan for every single agency. And then, let's see, I believe they were to so they are to consult with Congress, solicit and consider the views and suggestions of those entities potentially affected. The function activities of this section shall be considered to be inherently governmental functions. You see that? Inherently governmental functions. The drafting of the strategic plan under this section shall be performed only by federal employees. All right, now that means that federal employees means that they cannot hire NGOs or outside agencies to do that. Okay, now this goes on a little bit. I'm not going to get into all of it, the details. The performance plan then, they were to have a performance plan. They were to do program performance reports. And they were supposed to do manager. It says it does not apply to an agency with less than 20 million. It's like, that's crazy. It should apply to everybody, right? Then it has some pilot projects, etc. on here. Okay? All right. Now, so this is what President Trump is referring to. He did not just rewrite something. He did not create a new law. He is saying that this law needs to be complied with. Obviously, it has not been complied with. Has not been complied with, okay? So then, I also found, we have another one that was referred to. Someplace else, I can't remember where it was referred to. But here's the other one. All right, so then in January 2019, there is an act passed by Congress called the Foundations for Evidence-Based Policymaking Act of 2018. Now, I would say to you, if this 1993 bill was put in place and properly being implemented, this one would have never been required because this would have derived out of people doing their job in the first place. Right? Now, remember, most of these agencies were created in kind of the New Deal, really. They really were created about the time of the New Deal. FDR's New Deal is where a lot of the agencies were created and given the power to do certain things. And so they were not created in the Constitution, and they were not created in the original structure of the federal government. So keep that in mind, okay? Just keep that in mind. All right, so this is so here we are again talking about the strategic plan required under Section 306, a systemic plan for identifying and addressing policy questions relevant to programs, policies, regulations of the agency. So it may contain policy relevant questions for which the agency intends to develop evidence to support policy making, a list of data the agency intends to collect, use, or require to facilitate the use of evidence policy making, a list of methods, analytic approaches that may be used to develop evidence to supporting policy making, a list of challenges to developing evidence to support policy making, including any statutory or other restrictions to accessing relevant data, and the description of steps that the agency will take to accomplish paragraphs 1 and 2. Okay, so then it goes on And there's some other stuff, but here, this is critical. So one of the things that I complain about is in child welfare, they're not getting the right data. They're not collecting the right data, and they're not crunching the right data. So there are a couple reports called the Child Maltreatment Report. There is also the, what do they call it? The CRS, Case Review Summary, I think it is. And then there are AFCARS reports. And those reports collect what I guess it's okay data, but it's weird data. It's like how many children are substantiated for abuse, how many children are removed from their home, how many children are sent back to family, right? It's just numbers, it's just stats and data. There's no qualitative data. There's no qualitative data. So they don't talk about poverty. Now, they'll say generally as a category, a child can be removed, but they still don't even use poverty as a category. But we don't have the qualitative data, such as, are these children coming from broken homes? How many of these children are broken homes? How many of these children have witnessed a domestic violence incident in their home? How many of these children have a medical deficiency or a medical challenge? How many of these children have a mental health challenge, right? We're not getting the data to understand what the precursor events are that cause us to have a foster care system. That is my complaint over and over and over and over again. And that's what we need to. Now, as I go all the way around on that, I'm coming back to Doge and your submissions. So you need to make sure you do a submission on Doge. And you can either find the link in Family Forward Project, or you can go to green, Greene, green.house.gov, and it's not going to show up on her page. But if you go to her search bar and you type in Doge form or Doge submission, it'll give you a little reference point, and then you can click on that and it will take you to the submission form. A relatively easy submission form. You just put your name, address, email in there, and then it asks you what you want them to look into. So it doesn't tell you what the word limitation is. I've not tested it to see how far it will let me go, but obviously it's like one line, but if you get to the end of the line, it'll let you keep typing, right? So I don't know I'm sure they have some word limitation on it, but you don't know what it is. So we want to make sure these are read, and if you have too much in them, they won't read them. If they're people send me their stories sometimes that are so twisted and have so much detail in them, like I can't even get through and work it all out. But you want to put in there that the child welfare system needs to be investigated and audited for wrongful removals, wrongful retentions, and you need to put in there that they are removing children under false allegations, false drug screens, false medical diagnosis, false mental health diagnosis, and that they're doing it all for money, and that these children are more highly at risk of being abused in foster care than they are staying in their own home, and they're at a much higher risk of being trafficked than they are staying with their own family or with kinship. Okay, so that's kind of the theme that we want to keep putting in there, because we're not getting the right data. When I go to Congress and I talk to these congressional people about getting the data and looking at AFCARs, I tell them, I'm like, you don't even know what neglect is. You do not know what the precursor events are that are even putting people in these vulnerable situations. And until we can start backing up and going back and saying what's happening at the base level, we're not going to be able to change it. Now, I'm going to go back again in my history, my life. It's like, because sometimes I'm sure you guys would probably think like, you were a lawyer for 30 years. Like, I don't even understand how you think like this, right? Because lawyers do not think like this. This is why I probably irritate so many people, because I don't think like a lawyer thinks. In a way, I do. I think analytically like they do, but go back to way, way back in time when I started to college and I started doing college, and I didn't even get it. I mean, even way back then, I'm not even going to tell you the year. It's so embarrassing. But even way back then, I had never had a sociology class. I had never had a psychology class. And I go to the university and I take a psychology class and a sociology class. And I'm like, what is this? Like, what is this? It's like, we're talking about humans. Like, we're supposed to learn about the way humans think and behave, and like we're supposed to learn about that. I thought they just did it, right? Like, I was like, people just act the way they do because they act the way they do. I didn't get any of the analytical part of it. And then with sociology, when we were talking about, environments and cultures and even then I was like, we study that? I was like, we study things like that? That's like college, and it was like required back then. It was so basic. But I think the turning point was that when I learned about Man and Woman, the book Man and Woman by Margaret Mead, which was basically kind of an anthropology book, and it's this huge book. It was very well known at the time. Nobody ever talks about it today, but it was where she studied, and she went out and she observed primitive cultures, right? But she would just stop and make studies about the habits and the behaviors of male and female, like how they responded on a daily basis, how they responded to different cues in the environment, how they responded to each other, how they responded to danger, how they responded to basic needs, how they responded to children, right? Like it was all like, and it was like kind of jaw dropping for me. So the whole thing about the human behavior and the sociological aspects of it and the social behavior. And then I got more into group dynamics and social constructs and social psychology, and that's really where it's at, right? Like that's where, and we really just stopped at some point, and at some point we didn't care anymore. We didn't care anymore if there was an influence on the behavior and thoughts of people. And I'm seeing your messages. I'm not commenting on all of them because I'll lose my train of thought. But thank you for your comments. I do see your comments there. So we don't anymore think about really influences. We don't study cultural influences on behavior, right? So, and I know Elon Musk went to CPAC, and last night before I went to bed, they put his speech up, and I went up there. It wasn't really a speech, it was a conversation with somebody. It was a pretty erratic conversation if you happen to watch it, because, Elon Musk has probably the high IQ of, I don't know, 185, 190. It's so far spinning above everybody else's. And his interviewer obviously had an IQ of about 94, 95 because he wouldn't stop talking, and he wouldn't, oh gosh, I'm looking at your notes. I'm so sorry. Anyway, the interviewer wouldn't stop talking and wouldn't let Elon's brain work to be able to answer a question. But, even Elon Musk said he grew up in South Africa, but he was influenced by America even when he was growing up, because, he was in South Africa basically the first 20 years of his life. And he said, America was the hero. America were the good guys, right? Like culturally, they were the good guys. They fought evil, right? So, yeah, and thank you, Julie, for that as well. So, the good guys and the bad guys, but then, and, from cartoons and storytelling, but also from a real life study, from a real analog study of day-to-day experience. And we've got to put ourselves back in that nature again. And, I'm saying it from a strictly secular level. There are very good Christian people who, view this a little bit different perspective, but from a Christian level. But even from just the most secular level, our interactions and how we engage with people is culture. Okay, so, and I guess that's the full circle point I'm trying to make here. So as I read and I studied Margaret Mead, Man and Woman, and her going out and making these just very basic observations of culture and reactions, and spontaneous reactions, and yet some were spontaneous, but some were so like inbred that they became natural. And I say about I love my children. Y'all know about my kids who are no longer kids, they're adults. But when I adopted them from Russia and they were 5 years old, they had had such little experience with life. They had never seen a parking lot. They'd never seen a stove. They'd never seen a washing machine. They'd never seen a toaster. They had never except, I don't know, they got transported somehow, so they were in some kind of vehicle. But they did not on a day-to-day basis know what it was to get in a car and go to the grocery store, right? So when I brought them to America, it was like everything was an adventure. And this was so bizarre. This was like, it was very exhausting, I will tell you, but it was such a bizarre and enlightening experience. Like the first time I took them to the grocery store, and they were 5, but they were teeny tiny 5-year-olds, like 3 and 4 years old. I put them in the grocery cart, and I would take them through and they were speaking Russian. They couldn't talk to me, but I took them through the aisles of the grocery store, and I'd pick up a can of beans and I'd hand it to them, and they would take it and look at it and go, "Это moё," which means, "Is it mine? Is it mine?" And so, but every single experience was frightening and exciting at the same time. And I said, to the people I told about it, I was like, they were like raw human people. They were like, this was like raw human experience to see these children who were old enough to have real emotions and not just reacting to the immediate stimulus of their environment, but all these new things that they saw, and the new foods that they tasted. And after about 6 months, we'd been to several places to eat and fixed lots of dinners, and they'd been to Chinese, and of course by now they'd been to Chinese and buffets and Cracker Barrel with menus with pictures of foods, things they'd never ever seen in their life. And then I know one night, we, as a big family, we went out to a restaurant and they brought bread and set it on the table. And of course, it took a while after we gave all our orders. So we're all just sitting there talking, and there's the only thing on the table is bread. And one of my children, my Russian children, looked at me and said, "Just one food?" Like, here we'd come to this fancy restaurant and there was just this one thing to eat. So, but the point is again, back to that raw experience of human interaction. So and as I talked about training earlier, those of you who are just popping on, our training, we're doing the words, terms, and acronyms, and then we're going to do one on difficult communications. And part of that difficult communications is always accepting that you're going to get an unanticipated answer. You're going to get an unanticipated response, and how you deal with that, right? So, and they catch you off guard. You'll never quite be, aware of what's going on. Okay, so now I want to go on. Oh gosh, it's already 4:10. Thank you all for being so patient. Okay, so before we leave, I do want to then drill down to some real numbers. Okay, just some real, from a federal level, I want to give you some real numbers quickly, and then I'm going to do it on a state level so you can look up some things. Okay, here we go. Are you ready? I'm going to go back to this. Y'all are so sweet. Okay, so this is a publication that's put out by what's called the Congressional Research Service. You'll see that there at the top. It's called CRS. Now, this is, it says, informing the legislative debate since 1914. This is a very, I'm sure we pay for it as taxpayers, but it is a very, what I want to say, well-informed, and maybe a very, systematic review of policies and funding, etc. So this is primarily about the Title IV-E and some of the Title IV-B. Again, my printer wasn't very good on this, but here's one thing I want to look at over here. Okay, first of all, this little thing, which is much prettier in color, is the graphic that we use to talk about the foster care and adoption funding versus the prevention services. And you see Title IV-E prevention services down there was 182 million, which is ridiculous. So, and then you have here foster care services. You can just barely see it there in dark letters. So that is $4 billion. That's $4.8 billion, which I think it's even more than that. I don't even think that. See, that doesn't include all the other. So, and then look over here. Adoption and guardianship assistance is for almost $5 billion. Okay, so the foster care money and the adoption money has finally is almost the same, right? Now remember, these are the kids that were in foster care and then are adopted by foster parents, and the foster parents continue to get paid for the children. Okay, so they continue to get paid, and that is the kids who are in foster care. So you know, it's disgusting, right? Because if those parents, I think I have that money somewhere. Okay, I think I do right here. All right, so look at this. State welfare agencies spend about $31 billion. So there's your overall number on child welfare activities that was 2020. So that's 5 years ago. And I'm going to show you the distinction between now and 5 years ago. More than half of those dollars came from state and local offices, 51%. And the remainder, 30% was supplied by federal child welfare programs, including the Social Security Act, and 18% was from other federal programs. Okay, now remember that. Now, so it's still tax dollars, right? The 18%, which is not solely child welfare focused, principally social services block grant and TANF, TANF, which is food stamps. Less than 1% from offsets or private and in-kind support. All right, now federal funding made available programs solely child welfare focused totaled $11 billion in 2024. So in 2020, it was up here they were talking about 2020. Okay. All right, now let's go over here. So federal support, so federal support for Title IV-E work, estimated $9.7 billion for 2024, authorized on a mandatory, open-ended, permanent basis, okay? When I talk to people about Title IV-E, I say, look, it's a dollar for dollar match. It's a use it or lose it scheme. It's open-ended. There's no end to it. There's no cap on it. And it's never subject to sequester. And that's what those words mean right there. Mandatory, open-ended, permanent basis. All right, now look here. The states may opt to provide Title IV-E guardianship. Now, during 2023, about 726,900 children received Title IV-E assistance each month, including adoption. Do you see that? 560,000, foster care, 121,600, and guardianship, 45,000. So there are more children now in the ASFA adoption program than in foster care. I call this the secret welfare project right here, right there. You see that? That's 500,000 kids, and it just grows every year. And I've pulled those figures in the past too. I don't have all those with me. All right, so fewer than 41%. Okay, so then it talks about federal eligibility and some of those funding requirements. It says here that fewer than 41% of all formal foster care met those criteria. I don't believe that. I don't know where they're getting that information. All right, then, down here, which is another thing I say, here, this talks about the prevention money. All right, so Title IV-E, federal Title IV-E prevention funding is available for up to 50 4% of the state's Title IV-E prevention cost, okay, including related training, administration. The states must spend no less than 50% of their Title IV-E prevention funds on evidence-based services, as well supported. Nearly all states and 4 tribes have approved and submitted plans under Title IV-E prevention. Okay, so this means to you, it says here, prevention services were offered on or behalf of 18,000 children each month. Okay, now, so I tell them when I go to Washington, look, these prevention services, they only get a 50% reimbursement on the services they provide. So if a caseworker is in a home and she knows if she takes the children, she's going to get Title IV-E foster care money plus 100% reimbursement. Or if she leaves the children in the home, she's only going to get a 50% reimbursement. What do you think she's going to do? And they know that. They're all funded the same way. Okay, so then what about Tennessee? If you look in there, I'm not going to give you my office view there. My messy office, that is like a little bit of homeschool project behind me, but we're not doing that right now. Okay, so this is DCS, Tennessee's DCS. So this is Children's Services, and this is the 2013-14, because this is 10 years ago, and I wanted to show you what that is. So this is the 13-14, and this is the 15-16. And so look, $731 million, and they actually were proposing that it go down by $5 million to $727 million the following year. All right, so we've got 10 years ago, right? We've got 10 years ago, $727 million. All right, so we got a new commissioner, and in the past 1, 2, 3, she'll be going into her 4th budget year here, and this is her 4th budget year. So this is for budget year 25-26. This is Children's Services, and go down here, state, federal, other. I'll come back to that, and looky here. So we doubled it, more than doubled. This is $1.5 billion. So in 10 years, it's doubled. In 10 years, it has doubled. This is state money, $678 million. This is federal, $230 million. And this other right here, I don't know why we have to label it other, but this other right here is also tax dollars. Okay, that's what I just read to you in that other sheet. This is also federal money. So you can see if you look at those 3 numbers together, there's the 4th number. But if you look at all those numbers together, the federal money is, what is that? So 50, 60, probably 65%, right? Like 627 and 230 is 850. So we're probably right at about 65% is federal money. So do you think the states are going to keep doing what they do to be able to get the federal money? Of course they are. All right, so look at this. I'm going to show you some of these details. This is administration. So look at this. This is 2023, and then it goes up here, right? Okay, so we're going to go 23, 24, and then we're going to go up to 25, 26. So 23, 24, they had 322 employees at the administrative level only. So basically that's home office, right? That's home office. That's central office, they call it. So with 322 employees, they had payroll, there it says payroll, of $37.8 million. Over here, they increased it by 10 people, and now it's 43 million. So their payroll increased by 5 million for 10 people in 2 years. That's 2 years now. And overall, because you look, there's also an operational budget. See over here it says operational. The operational budget went up. The operational and payroll budget went up for central office alone. For central office alone, which is the big bureaucracy who lives up in the high tower in the UBS building, right? I call it the bus building, BUS building, UBS. is 30 million. Okay, in 2 years, we have an increase of 30 million. And they're not doing that many more kids. This particular report doesn't have all of the number of kids on it. But here on needs assessment, in 2 years, we go from 17 million to 34 million. So it doubled in 2 years. And then let's go over here. This is interesting. Social Security income. You see that? Which means they're taking the children's Social Security income. 13 million. So if a child goes into foster care and their parent is either deceased or they're a disabled child, they are eligible for a Social Security benefit, and the state takes it. Right there you go. Proof is in the pudding. Okay, now let's look at this one. All right, this is about John Wilder Youth Development Center. So John Wilder Youth Development is for delinquent youth ages 13 to 18 who are committed by the courts to the department. So this is your delinquent kids, it says, right? And look at this. They had in 23-24, 185 employees, and now they have 130 employees. So they have fewer employees by 50. And their payroll went from 9 million, that is payroll. Payroll went from 9 million to 13 million with about a third cut, a 1/3 decrease from 185 to 130. They went up from 9 to 12, okay? So, and that was the biggest jump in their expenses, because actually here, their operations, 78, 79, 7 goes down to 5 million. All right, so they jumped up in their payroll, and let's look about the kids. Okay, and I swear, we're on the last couple things I want to do here. All right, now this is a total. No, I'm going to go over here first. This then is the Youth Development Center. So Wilder and Woodland Hills. And you can see Woodland Hills. If you go down there, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, they shut down. And over here are the years, the 2018 all the way up to 26. That's on admissions, releases, average daily census, and cost per occupancy day, okay? Important number. All right, now you can see Woodland Hills is NA's out because they shut down. Look at Wilder. In 2018, which is, 6 years ago? 7 years ago, $363 a day. And look at what it is for the budget for 2025-26. $1,486.82. It's down just a few dollars from the year before. It goes from $363 in 18 to $1,486. Now look up here. This is their average daily census. Wilder went, their average daily census, hang on here. Get over here. Okay, their average daily census at Wilder went from 116 to 33. Got that? 116 to 33. Their cost per head went up from 363 to 1486. Now, that means per month, a child in that facility costs the taxpayers $44,604, or annually $535,255.20 per child. And if there are an average daily census of 33, that is $16 million, or 17. I came up with 17,663 per year to house 33 children. 33, 17 million. Okay. Oh, thank you to our new commissioner. She's doing such a grand job. Okay, so here's the final tab to the taxpayers. All right, the total for the Department of Children's Services. Here's the staff. 3,857. 3,864. Now, when she came in, I'm trying to think. She came in maybe in, this is her fourth budget, because the first year she went up 150 million, the second year 350 million, the next year 500 million, maybe her third or fourth year. I should know this because I remember it was September the 1st when we booted out Jennifer Nichols, who now found herself to a judicial position. But anyway, the big thing was like, we don't have enough people. We don't have enough people. Okay, so from 23 to 25, they've effectively added 7 people. 7 people. All right, and the payroll has gone from 344,843 to 391,826. So the payroll has gone up $47 million for 7 people. 7 people. 2 years. Increase of 47 million. I don't even know how you fathom that. I'm just like, 47 million. Wow. Wow. And then you see they went up in total from 1.3 billion to 1.5 billion. And then finally, I showed you this earlier today, but this is what they show in the budget. So this is the Children's Services, state, federal, and other, which is still federal money. So there you can see if you add up the percentages there. If you look at federal and other, the last 2 numbers, it's 16 and 42. So that's 52, 58, right? So almost 60% of the money is federal money, which is what I say. It's actually more than what I say, because I say at least 40%. So it's actually more like 60%. And then if you look down here on their expenses, if you look at case management, custody support, adoption services, those are all foster care and adoption. So you look at those, that's 82% of the expenses is in harvesting children. If you look here at family support services, see that right there? That's the rehabilitation, reunification expenses. That is 7%, right? Ooh, see that? 7% of the budget. The needs assessment, which is why we should be finding out what families need. What are they spending there? 2%, 2%, right? They say general admissions 6%, but it sounds like it's a whole lot more, doesn't it? Okay, so there we go. Now you know. Now you know. That is the money. Now you can find... Is that enough to make you dizzy and your eyes? Now send that to Elon Musk. I totally agree. So yeah, we need to chop this video up in manageable pieces and send it along to people who need to see it right now. So finally, and then I'm going to scooty boot out of here, is Facebook has now changed their deal again, right? Like you're always in a new deal with them, whether you like it or not. And they now will not store live videos in it forever. Like I always put never delete when I do a live video. And if you go to Family Forward Project and you go to videos, you'll see a whole bunch of my old live videos. So now this weekend, my project's going to be trying to go to my computer and figure out how to download a lot of those older videos and somehow store them. So I will be working on that. And then one last thing. many times I have told you that I was a activist before being an activist was cool, right? Like I have been out there trying to tell the story, trying to shake things up for a long time. So I've been cleaning out my office because I have to sell my office and regroup and do make a whole bunch of changes in my life logistically. And I was cleaning out some boxes and I found this. This is back in the day when we had to, if we went to the General Assembly, we had to actually request a DVD. I couldn't record it on my phone. You couldn't record while you were there, so I had to request a DVD. And I always wondered where I did. I'm going to try to download it or upload it. This is from, see that? I know it's backwards to you, but 4/23/2008, y'all. 2008. How many years ago is that? 17 years ago. 17 years. Oh my God. 17 years. I started this 17 years ago. Okay. So I don't know, maybe I'm a total failure that I could never, but I've made lots of changes. I know it doesn't look like it, but I will get into that, all the cases and the victories that we've had over the years. But we have a long ways to go, and we're going to take all this auditing, performance, measures, et cetera. We're going to take all that and we're going to push it. Okay. So, yeah. Yep. Consider to do a short video. Yeah. I should do a short video, right? But you know me, I start talking about it and then I get distracted telling you about Margaret Mead and men and women and why we should all be considering anthropology these days. All right, I'm going to check out of here. I got to figure out how to save this video. I am going to work on my trainings this weekend as well so we can get these last 2 done. I got to make it happen. I'm going to be out of the state. I'm going to be traveling most of the month of April. I have a whole bunch of things going on. So just be cool, hang in there, support us, get the reports for Kentucky Bridget. Start Googling Kentucky budget, okay? Kentucky, and you have a cabinet there and not a department, so cabinet of children and families budget, and just start Googling. And if you want to get on a Zoom or something sometime, we can do that together, because I want you all to know how to be able to jump on there and start digging these numbers out, because you will be shocked. You will be shocked. And what happens every year is these heads of these departments just go and whine and cry to the General Assembly or your governor and cry about needing more money, and they just write him another check, okay? Give him more money, give him more money, give him more money. Nobody ever is getting the right numbers to look at. Okay, so I'm going to punch out of here, so I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.